At the top of the Rocky Mountain, Kong sits at his throne, if you will, watching the sunset with Anne, and when it starts to get dark, a fog rolls in. Anne is sitting slightly behind Kong, just observing him. Kong is looking at one of the bones of one of his fellow band members that he used to travel together with. Maybe a sibling, parent, or child. All that's clear is that Kong may just be the last of his kind. We can see this sink in Kong's facial expression. We never get a flashback or see what actually happened to the Kong species, but in a moment paying homage to 2001: A Space Odyssey, Kong takes the bone and weaves it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, getting more and more aggressive as his eyes become more watered, and it begins to rain. He lets out a pain-filled roar before throwing the bone in the air and banging his chest as lightning strikes. This can also be a throwback to Hulk Gray. Anne stares up at him with pity as he shakes his head and solemnly walks back into his cave. That's when he notices a rock falling in his peripheral vision, and he goes to look. It's Jack continuing to make his way towards Anne, and now he's stuck behind a rock. If he moves, Kong will see him, and all Kong could do is reach around with his big hand and catch him. He's screwed. Before Kong can do anything, we cut back to Anne just sitting there in the rain, thinking, processing all that's gone on in such a short time. But all of a sudden, a pack of tremendously large eagles come flying onto the ledge, and she once again screams as one picks her up in its giant talons. Kong leaps into action as he begins to fight off these war eagles. That's right, the original had a pterodactyl, the 05 remake had those bat creatures. Here, I'm giving a shout out to one of Kong animator Willis O'Brien's unmade films, War Eagle, which was an amazing concept back then, and is still amazing now. Kong fights off the eagles swarming around him, which is foreshadowing for the climax of the film. The main eagle loosens his grip, and Anne falls back onto the mountain, further back towards the cave. Jack realizes Kong is distracted and swoops in. He grabs Anne from behind, and she's surprised to see him. "We gotta go, now!" Jack says, picking her up as they run for the edge of the mountain. The edge has a huge rope-like vine that goes downward. The reason they didn't just go back the way they came is because Kong is stomping all around, and at that moment, he had moved back towards the cave, and if they tried to run that way, they'd be accidentally crushed. Kong takes one of the eagles and rips its wing off and throws it to the side, as it falls down like a butterfly with a broken wing, or a fighter jet succumbing to air and gravity. It's now pouring on them as lightning strikes more and more and thunder rolls. After the eagles retreat, Kong notices that Anne isn't anywhere to be found, until he notices the rope-like vine jiggling and moving and being tugged on. He looks over the edge to see that Anne is leaving, and he pounds his fist once more and roars. He's now pissed and feels pretty betrayed. In the words of Freddy Krueger, "She's mine! Mine! Mine!" He begins to grab the vine and pull them up. And in a last-ditch effort, Jack looks down and gulps, hoping everything will be alright. Jack and Anne both stare at each other and nod before jumping down into a lake which leads to a stream. They let the current take them for a while before catching a stray branch. Kong is right on their tails. They don't care if they're getting cut up by trees and rocks or whatever they pass. They just want to make it to base, like some sort of sick and twisted version of hide and seek. Something in their minds register the wall as the safe point, but Carl has other plans. He has leftover sailors on standby. There's a sailor on the top of the wall keeping watch. He turns away from the jungle and shouts down to the crew that Driscoll is coming and he's got Anne. They open the gates and Jack and Anne run through. Jack tells them to close it, but Denham argues to keep it open. But Jack is adamant and gets them closing the gate. All the commotion attracts the natives to come out of their homes, and when they see the struggle to close the gates, they know what's going on, and they run out and also try to close them. But Kong has arrived. He bangs and knocks at the giant gate, and that shoots many people onto their backs. Kong then begins to push with all his might, and the gate begins to splinter. The gate doors fly open, and we see the great King Kong in all his glory. Natives and sailors flee. Denham gets stricken with fear and orders the sailors to fall back to the beach. Kong makes his way through the village. The native mothers try to protect their children. There's a little native girl crying in fetal position in the middle of the road, and Kong is stomping forward. The mother runs by and grabs her, but not everyone survives. Many huts are stepped on. His attention goes towards natives on a wooden and bamboo construction, aiming, stepping back, and throwing spears and arrows at him. It's like toothpicks to him. He pulls each one out, and they only cause him a slight pinch. One even goes in his gums, and that actually angers Kong since that's a little more painful than in the shoulder, or any other body part that was previously hit. He picks it out, then swings down, knocking many natives off and picking up the native man who took the shot at his jaw. Kong takes him and puts him in his giant mouth. The pressure breaks many of the natives' bones as he screams and squirms in pain. But since Kong isn't a man-eater, he takes him out of his mouth and slams him onto the floor and stomps him into the mud. He then tears up the wooden and bamboo construction and throws the debris at fleeing natives, which take them down. He picks up another piece of wooden debris and uses it as a club, swinging it at people and making them go flying like baseballs. He puts more natives in his mouth and stomps even more people, breaking their spines and suffocating their crushed faces in the dirt. He follows the sailors to the beach, and now there's no turning back. Carl knows it's now or never. The sailors begin shooting at Kong, and Ann flinches a bit and yells, "No!" And Denim also yells no. He puts his hand out and yells, "No! Gas bombs!" Another crate of gas bombs is opened as Kong wastes a couple of sailors trying to tie him down with rope before he's barraged with gas bombs. Carl contributes to the bomb throwing and gasses him right in the face. Kong finally goes down for the count and falls asleep. Denim steps forward and pets his fur. The whole world would pay to see this. An excited smile comes across his face before turning to the crew. "We're millionaires, boys. I'll share it with all of you. Why, in a few months, his name will be up in lights on Broadway. Kong, the eighth wonder of the world!"